For nearly half a century, Cerwin-Vega built the loudest speakers in America, the bass bins that cracked theater ceilings and cleared dance floors at the touch of a volume knob. Owners did not merely like these speakers, they believed in them with something close to devotion. Then came December of 2011, when the company that once rattled Grauman's Chinese theater got quietly folded into a guitar maker, and within a few years, it was sold off for parts. This is the story of how the speakers behind an Oscar-winning technology ended up on a clearance shelf, and it begins in a small workshop in Los Angeles in 1954. The man at that workbench was Gene Czerwinski, though everyone called him Gene. Born in Toledo, Ohio in 1927, he carried a Polish surname that would one day give the company half its name. His schooling took him through electrical engineering at the University of Toledo and onto physics at Michigan, where, as a graduate student, he built the entire audio system for the university's television station. Those who worked under him remembered a particular kind of man. He was the engineer's engineer, quiet and exact, able to sketch a working amplifier with a slide rule and predict its output to within 1%. His real education happened in aerospace. Working at Bendix in Los Angeles, Czerwinski built a solid-state power amplifier for towed sonar, a germanium monster that drew so much current it once yanked a test helicopter 10 feet out of the air and sent him straight back to the bench. The question he kept circling never changed, which was how to move an enormous volume of air and move it cleanly. In 1954, he founded a company he called Vega Associates. 3 years later, he was selling a solid-state hi-fi amplifier built on that very same sonar circuit, and by the early 1960s, his drivers were turning up inside the cabinets of Fender, Sun, and Vox. The little workshop had long since outgrown its basement. By the 1970s, the brand had become the loudest name in American audio. Its philosophy went straight onto the company literature, that loud is beautiful as long as it stays clean. You could spot a Cerwin-Vega woofer from across any room. Those 15 and 18-inch cones ringed in bright red rubber and set into vented cabinets whose high-order tuning traded sheer size for raw efficiency. Stand a pair of its floor-standing towers in a living room, the 15T among them, and you got sound that frightened the neighbors while keeping the low end tight. The masterpiece, though, was never meant for living rooms. In 1974, Universal needed something extraordinary for its disaster film Earthquake, and that's when Cerwin-Vega built the bass horns behind a system called Sensurround. Inside it sat an 18-inch driver, Model 189E, folded into a horn nearly 6 feet long, reaching all the way down to 33 Hz and driven by 1600-watt amplifiers until the auditorium itself shook at 120 decibels. Only 17 of these installations ever existed across the country, and each one rented to theaters for roughly $500 a week. At the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, the rumble cracked the ceiling outright, which forced management to hang a net over the audience to catch the falling plaster. In 1975, the technology won an Academy Award, a scientific and engineering plaque handed to Universal's sound department to Walden Watson, Richard Stumpf, and Robert Leonard. Cerwin-Vega had built the very horns that made the whole effect possible, yet its name appeared nowhere on the citation. That omission turned out to be the shape of everything that came after. What finally killed Sensurround was Dolby. When Star Wars arrived in 1977, Dolby Stereo handed every theater multi-channel sound straight off an ordinary optical track, with no special horns, no rented amplifiers, and no net over the audience. A system that did exactly one thing well suddenly looked like a sideshow, and by the early 1980s, Sensurround had vanished from theaters for good. What sank Cerwin-Vega in the end, though, had nothing to do with Dolby. The true cause sat much closer to home, in a balance sheet that refused to cooperate, and in a founder who had quietly decided the time had come to retire. Through the 1980s and 1990s, the company spread in every direction at once. It pushed into home towers, car subwoofers, club rigs, and the stroker drivers built for sound pressure contests that screamed past 160 decibels. The problem was that it had become loud everywhere and dominant nowhere, still saddled with the heavy overhead of a real manufacturer in an industry that had already shipped its factories overseas. From more than 250 employees, the workforce shrank to roughly 80 by the turn of the century, and that's when bankruptcy finally arrived. Around 2002, the brand was bought by the Stanton Group, a Florida company best known for its phonograph cartridges and DJ turntables. Nobody ever disclosed the price. Gene Czerwinski, who had wanted only to step back, stepped away from it entirely. For a while, the press releases sounded confident enough. Inside the building, the people who actually understood the economics felt nothing of the sort. Behind closed doors, the engineers did what engineers have always done in a moment like this, which meant they kept their heads down, finished their development cycles, and quietly polished their resumes. On December 5th of 2011, both Stanton and Cerwin-Vega were swallowed by the Gibson Guitar Corporation of Nashville, a maker of guitars that was quietly piling up debt-buying audio brands it never learned how to run. Gibson filed for bankruptcy in 2018. 2 years after that, Cerwin-Vega got sold off once more, this time back to its own former car stereo division, the last people on Earth who still wanted the name. The name survived everything that followed. The company that truly earned it, the one a quiet engineer started in a small Los Angeles workshop back in 1954, did not survive to see it. What survives of Cerwin-Vega in 2026 is messier than any tidy obituary could capture. The name now belongs to a company called Cerwin-Vega Incorporated, the direct descendant of that old car stereo division. Working out of Los Angeles and selling mostly subwoofers and speakers for cars, boats, and the kind of audio that lives in the trunk. Its marketing still carries the same old line, exactly the way all of these brands tend to, that it has been making it loud since 1954. There is one detail that most owners never learn. For much of the 1980s and 1990s, the speakers were not even built in America at all, but license-built in Denmark, in a town called Nørreager, where the very last set rolled off the line in 1997. When the operational company finally dissolved, that long chain of transmission simply snapped. The surviving knowledge, the understanding of why one folded horn truly moved air while another merely moved itself, never managed to transfer, and it could not have, because it lived inside people rather than on paper. Once those people retired, the knowledge quietly retired alongside them. The brand survived, but the craft did not. Somewhere tonight, in a basement in Cleveland or a garage just outside Phoenix, a Cerwin-Vega 15T clicks on, and the 15-inch woofer with its bright red surround starts pushing a wall of air across the room. Exactly the way a quiet engineer in Los Angeles intended it to, 70 years ago. The company that built that speaker no longer exists. The speaker, though, still works and still plays. That steady wall of sound becomes its final answer to everything that happened to its maker. If you enjoyed this one, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.